So I watched the new Netflix documentary, Mercury 13. Now it's fascinating. It's the same mission from the movie Hidden Figures. So this is before we're trying to send people to the moon. This is just us trying to send people into orbit around Earth. And the men that ended up going into orbit, they were called the Mercury 7. So the Mercury 13, these were 13 women who actually underwent all the same testing to go into space as men, but the program ended up being canceled. But not by a lot. There was a chance that when you look at history, unfortunately, there was never going to be, it would have been great if there was a female president who was president during a time of war, maybe a female FDR led America to victory against the Nazis. That would be great imagery and that would be really cool, but that was never going to happen for a lot of reasons. But the idea that a woman could have been the first person to walk on the moon or one of the first people to kind of go into space, that could easily have happened, and it was unfortunate why it didn't. And what's interesting in the documentary here, you see how the person who came up with this program, headed up the program, William Lovelace, and I don't know if that's any relation to Ada Lovelace, very famous feminist icon, or if it's just a coincidence, but the guy it was a man who came up with the program, and one of the major people who kind of was instrumental in getting this program shut down was a pilot called Jackie Cochran, very famous female pilot, and the documentary kind of says that for her being perceived as the greatest female aviator, it meant a lot to her, and she really didn't want to be upstage. So you get the sense that there is a distinction between someone who's a female and achieves a lot and is very individualistic and is a trailblazer versus someone who's maybe a feminist and also opens the door for other women as well. And it's interesting to think how much of this was tied to our perception of what space colonization and space exploration represents. So if you look at during the Cold War, where you had the space race, it was all about competition and a race, a space race, and about nationalism and national pride and conquering and leaving your mark and claiming certain areas of space, claiming the moon. Now we look at what space colonization symbolizes. It's often international cooperation, everyone coming together, overcoming these arbitrary national borders to explore space together. It's all about environmental damage and potentially, starting over and being forced, like fleeing bigotry and kind of space exploration as a kind of escapism. And one of the women joked at one point, "Oh, I have 8 kids. Of course I'd want to go to space, get some peace and quiet." And it's said in jest, but you wonder how much of the similar drives to want to be a pilot and to want to fly, how much of that is related to the same desires to go to space. And I was amazed at how much they're connected. Now, other people may be obvious, but so much of the qualifications, it had to do with being a pilot, how many hours in flight that you'd logged, how many hours above a certain altitude, and you see that there's a lot of the same factors at play. And when you hear the number of hours that you had to have logged flying above a certain altitude, you realize being a pilot, probably a pretty lonely profession. You got to spend a lot of your time just by yourself in a cockpit, and you wonder if that explains some of the gender disparity of people who want to be pilots. Nothing to do with aptitude, just kind of a desire, a willingness to spend so much of your life completely by yourself. And I liked how they looked at the qualifications and what you had to do to become an astronaut. And it was interesting, a lot of things that gave women a natural advantage. So even the height requirement, you have to be under 5'11". And if you look at, for guys, that means only 60%, you're looking at guys, only 60% of guys you can even consider and are even potential. If you look at women, it's almost 100% of women. So that's just a huge advantage when you're trying to pick the best people. There's going to be so much more women that you can potentially choose from than guys. And that's just one example. And it's so interesting, some of the reasoning that was used against having women in space, it had nothing to do with intelligence, because to be an astronaut, you don't have to be a genius. It's mostly fortitude and your body's ability to withstand all these different kinds of stresses and all these different strange artificial environments. And nowadays, there's some people who might argue that women aren't as good leaders or aren't as aggressive or things like that. But I don't think anybody would argue that women aren't as tough and don't have as much fortitude. And whether that's Ronda Rousey or just the obvious, just seeing, I mean, I guess people have always seen women give labor, but that's just not something that, I think this perception that women are kind of delicate flowers, and they got into it that originally there was the idea that women couldn't be nurses because they couldn't be in hospitals and just around the blood and gore. They were too sensitive for it. And just funny how, again, there's a ways to go in with gender issues, but I think one thing that has been mostly overcome is any idea that women aren't as tough and are delicate flowers. Now, for some people, I think the documentary is going to be a little light on the science of space travel and the historical context, not educational enough, but I think that's fine, that it's more of a tribute for the women that were in this program and never got to do what they set out to do, unfortunately, so it's nice that they can at least have this. And I love how they actually interviewed them late in their life, and you saw just the different attitudes and demeanors that they really did have. You saw the one very gruff, but seemed like very content with her life, and then you saw the other just warmth, and just so much warmth and just so inspirational to listen to. And then there was another that was very angry, and who knows what she was angry about and what in her life has got her to that point, but she did seem like there was some resentment and some bitterness, and again, it's just kind of sad.